Those things were like a conflagration in the 60s, unruly, explosive, and everywhere you looked, especially in the United States. In addition to being legendary rock musicians, Janis Joplin and Jim Morrison were among the most fascinating and unexpected performers of all time. Their behind-the-scenes relationship was far more troubling than any wild backstage anecdote or friendly ego fight. Jim Morrison was someone she detested, not simply disliked. You will never appreciate their music in the same way after you discover the truth. Everything changed because of a single night, a single humiliating and violent incident. Janis Joplin's fury was so palpable that she never again felt the need to speak out. The line she crossed was bloody. Janis was wound up pretty bad. She rose to fame from humble beginnings as a girl hailing from Port Arthur, Texas. Right from the start, it seemed like that town was out to dampen her enthusiasm. Being unique was not only frowned upon but criminalized in that myopic town. Janis had no desire to do this. While her pals swayed to pop music and wore pearls, she listened to the black blues of artists like Ma Rainey, Lead Belly, and Bessie Smith. They sounded genuine and unfiltered. She felt an overwhelming, inexplicable emotion as the music moved her. But she was unique, and that made her an easy target. Acne, obesity, and her thrift store wardrobe were the targets of others' mockery. That wasn't light-hearted banter. It was cruel, insensitive, and relentless harassment that caused immense pain. Janis also persisted. Even when others in her town disapproved of her support for racial integration, she spoke her mind without fear of reprimand. She stood alone in all the important ways because she was so courageous. Her companions considered her a threat. In the beginning, she believed that going to college would be a great escape. She continued her education at Lamar State before transferring to Austin, Texas University. Janis looked for a place that would welcome her unconditionally. However, Austin was not without its rudeness. Barefoot and holding an autoharp in her lap, she would sing her heart out in cafes. Her tone was one of defiance. However, it failed to alleviate her embarrassment. The most unsightly student on campus actually won the vote in one fraternity. What we thought was a joke turned out to be a serious statement. You're also not welcome here. Janis emerged from that ordeal stronger than before. Her music reflected every rejection and insult she had ever received. She was a multi-talented artist. Aside from shaking, she screamed and wailed. Her voice transformed into a painful instrument. She made an effort to be truthful rather than flawless. When she sang, you couldn't help but sing along. But when the discomfort transformed into a performance, Janis discovered an alternative means of coping. The bottle she clutched in her defense initially brought her solace, but it would later become a burden. There was the bottle before there were any stories or jokes. Janis Joplin saw the bottle, Southern Comfort, as more than just a beverage. Beyond keeping them alive, it swore to protect them. While performing, she used it as a second microphone, and she could easily access it off stage as well. No matter if she was performing at Woodstock or a tiny club with 1,000 people, that flaming bottle was never far from her. She was able to keep her voice steady and hide her nerves from the audience because of it. It was also not for nothing. With the same intensity that gave her voice its powerful sound, she chugged it down. The majority of her admirers were unaware that Southern Comfort was actually a sugary draw that was misunderstood, much like Janis herself. Still, she came to identify with it. A matching lynx fur coat and hat were sent to her as a token of appreciation by the company. She had made their brand famous without even trying, and there was no money or advertising deal. However, the bottle served more than a decorative purpose. It became an ally in her struggle against isolation, a soother in times of self-doubt, and an addictive poison. She felt a surge of energy, but it also shattered her fragile defenses. While her notoriety initially masked her imperfections, they only became worse over time. Janis desired love above all else when the audience was silent and their gaze was diverted away from her. There was the most excruciating agony. Someone loved her, but they ended up betraying her. Janis Joplin was a fiery and confident performer, but she had no interest in becoming famous. She yearned for a bond. A delicate longing for true love was lain beneath the stormy vocals of the woman in the background. However, finding love wasn't a picnic. Relationships with her fizzled out fast. She devoted herself wholeheartedly to each one with equal fervor, to her music, but she often encountered grief and quiet. Her partners couldn't cope with the mayhem, even though they thought she was brilliant. Her fame amazed some, but her heart was the only thing that amazed others. Without fail, she emerged victorious. In 1968, The most terrifying incident occurred at New York's Chelsea Hotel. An aside in Leonard Cohen's song Chelsea Hotel 2 refers to a night when he and Janis met briefly. To him, it was merely a fleeting moment. The impact left Janis with a bruise. Despite her best intentions, she came away from her visit with nothing more than a memory that would remain with her for far longer than anyone could have imagined. Songs like Crybaby and Piece of My Heart revealed her heartbreak. Perhaps they are all distortions of confessions, songs about overcoming adversity rather than love songs. Every word conveyed her sincere desire to be chosen, but she couldn't help but let love slip away from her, and that melancholy yearning was about to meet someone who would amplify her suffering, a man who rejected her and attempted to exert dominion over her. Upon hearing his story, Jim Morrison was more than simply a famous musician. He embodied all that was repulsive about life on the fringes, a poet tormented by his art, a seductive rebel who made disorder appear beautiful. Behind the leather pants and stage poems, there was a much darker side to him, as those closest to him knew. The foundations of that myth have begun to crumble in recent years. Some of Jim Morrison's closest associates finally spoke out in the 2025 documentary Before the End, searching for Jim Morrison, ending a century of silence. They included Judy Hulston, who was once their girlfriend. Morrison, she claimed, had crossed a terrifying physical line in addition to hurting her feelings. She went into horrific detail one night about how her voice went unheard, his rage visible in his dark eyes, and his firm hold on her arms. She wasn't the only one who thought he went crazy, according to her. The fact that Morrison struck Pamela Des Barres for no apparent reason remained in her memory. According to John Densmore, a drummer for The Doors, Morrison was seen brandishing a knife at a woman. What once seemed like an excess of rock and roll to the fans now appears to be a pattern of aggressive control. The women in his inner circle frequently bore the brunt of his power plays, which he cloaked as art. Rereading these accounts brings to light an unsettling fact. Janis Joplin's altercation with Jim Morrison was motivated by more than just ego. She recognized his danger and wished she hadn't become another victim. What transpired when they finally met makes that threat seem insignificant. Janis Joplin and Jim Morrison, two rock and rollers, were supposed to be magical when they met at the life-altering party. The event was meticulously organized by producer Paul Rothschild. He imagined it to be well-known, thrilling, and perhaps even beautiful. Therefore, he threw a celebration for the two of them in Hidden Hills, a suburb of Los Angeles. At this gathering, legends were either made or shattered. All seemed well at first. Morrison appeared remarkably clean when Janis arrived, and she was in a good mood. They were immediately friends. She was told she was incredible by him. His confidence was captivating to her. For a while it appeared as though Rothschild's wager had been successful. Afterwards, the beverages started to be served. Jim lived up to his reputation that night, which was that he could quickly transition from charming and friendly to nasty and furious. Slurring, tripping, and being overly boisterous became his worst traits as the celebration progressed. In subsequent remarks, Rothschild was more direct. Morrison went from being an artist to a cretin. Even though Janis had a reputation for being very energetic and wild, she wasn't like that. In contrast to her inviting inebriation, his was lethal. Jim pursued her as she attempted to flee. A harmless flirtation escalated into something much darker and riskier. Morrison did something that would alter her reputation irrevocably. The night she resisted, right as Janis believed she had an escape route. Even though it happened so quickly, Janis would never forget it. As the celebration unraveled and Morrison's conduct deteriorated, Janis had had enough. She prepared to vanish into thin air by making her way to the band's station wagon, which served as her makeshift refuge. It didn't stop Jim, though. He stumbled and slurred his way to the car after her. He was inebriated and exuding self-assurance. After that, he yanked out a handful of her hair with a forceful lurch. At that point, things started to go wrong. An entire bottle of Southern Comfort, Janis's brand and protection, was the first thing she reached for. It was a swing from her. Morrison was knocked unconscious, bloodied, and humiliated as he fell to the floor after the glass shattered on top of his head. Not only was it a means of self-defense for Janis, but it was also a statement. No one would ever again subject a woman who had endured years of bullying and scorn to such treatment. Slamming the door behind her, she got in the car and drove away. After making a U-turn, she departed. For Morrison, it was the case. Jim returned the following day, determined to get Janis's number despite the damage he had done, according to Paul Rothschild. For all he knew, it was just another wild night. It was a boundary that Janis would never again cross. They continued to fight shortly after, this time in front of an audience, so that wasn't their only altercation. Just why she refused to forgive him.
The last moments of certain narratives are devoid of sound. It triggered twice. Janis and Jim reconnected not long after their encounter in the Hidden Hills. This time it took place at the scene, a bustling Manhattan watering hole frequented by rock's A-list. While Morrison was inebriated, Janis watched the Jimi Hendrix concert with caution. According to those who witnessed it, Morrison simply couldn't resist. As if disorder were his currency, Hendrix charged the stage and let loose during his set, drawing attention. When furious, Janis said exactly what was on her mind. Drink in hand, she hurled it at him. As if that weren't bad enough, she allegedly hit him again, this time with another bottle. A tangle of shattered glass, perspiration, and pride ensued on the club floor as Joplin, Morrison, and Hendrix became entangled with each other. Like a fever dream, it appeared. Janis, though, saw it through her own lens. More than what he did to her, Morrison was the object of her hatred. Everything that he represented was something she despised. The inebriated genius who could get away with anything, the man who was lauded for his danger while women like her were berated for their difficulty to handle. Janis was reprimanded for managing to remain alive, while Morrison was lauded for destroying things. She was never interested in working with him again, saying hello, or mentioning him in interviews after that. Despite her efforts to distance herself, the music industry insisted on linking the two icons of defiance, melancholy and excess. Even though Janis never actually said it, her roar versus his tail is the last word in every song, and it was always possible for one of them to change the ending. Instead of Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison became the mysterious genius. His wrath became a riddle. Though he could be cruel and careless at times, people still thought he was brilliant. Nobody could trust Janis. She was too dramatic, too noisy, and too much. Because of this, she kept thinking about him. Following that tense evening, she made it plain that she had no interest in continuing their relationship. Instead of publicly yelling or dragging him, she discreetly departed. A world that celebrated broken men while punishing broken women was what Janis was angry about, not any one man in particular. While everyone marveled at Morrison's mayhem, they passed judgment on Janis's anguish. But she refused to let it define who she was. During her final months, she provided assistance to others. Despite the fact that Bessie Smith was laid to rest without a headstone, she contributed financially to its purchase. Those who had been overlooked were championed by her. Not seeking revenge, but making a lasting impression, was Janis's strength. There is truth in Janet Jackson's music, in her fury, and in every scream. While she was unable to secure the joyful ending, she was granted the final word. If you were touched by this story, we would greatly appreciate it if you could click like, subscribe for more hidden music history, and do us a solid and leave a comment. Was Janis correct in ending her relationship with Morrison permanently, or was she merely drawing attention to a system that ignored women like her? Much obliged. We will meet up with you soon.